Arira, kia ora koutou, mihi tēnei kia koutou, katoa. Me koutou rā e noho ana ki te kāinga e whakarongo mai nei tēnā koe, tēnā kōrua pia, tēnā koutou. So what we're going to do, when we do nutrition and dietetics and things like that, we actually have a huge focus on the cycle of life. So nutrition for various cycles of life, and it can start from a child inside the womb of his mother, and then once they're born, there's that first 2 years, and then there's that 3 to 5 years, and then there's the 5 to 12 years, and then there's adolescence, and then there's adulthood, and then there's elderly. And then within that, we have a pregnant mother, the various stages of pregnancy, and then breastfeeding. And every one of those cycles, there's a particular type of nutrition that is required by those people. And if we were to look at every single cycle today, we'd probably be here for the rest of the week. I'm going, oh, this is what this particular age group should have, this is what this particular age group should have. So we just thought, rather than focus on all of the age groups, we were just going to focus on Tamariki because we believe that that's the most important age group, because it's one of those things that if you get it right at the beginning, most of it hopefully should flow through all the way. Within health, we talk about the first 1,000 days of life. First 1,000 days being the most important time in anyone's life is that first 1,000 days. And in particular, when we talk about the first 1,000 days, we often refer to the importance of brain development. Why a baby is born absolutely helpless is because his state of development, unlike any other animal, is just totally helpless because its brain is still growing. If we let a human brain carry on growing inside the mum, she wouldn't be able to give birth. And for all mammals, for our mamas, our fires, they give the most painful birth of any other animal on the planet just because of our sheer brain size. And to feed that amazing brain development, we need good food. And there's no way around it. And in particular, as we all know, those first foods are te waiu, te mama. That's the first food. But we'll just get on with the slide right now. So the first 1,000 days, te wā tino take nui. Just go like that. Trying to change, I can't see an arrow. Oh, I can see an arrow up there. I can't see an arrow down there. Right. Does anyone recognise that ore? Poupou e tangi ana tama ki te kai mana, waiho mā me tiki ake ki te pau a haukai, hei āmai te pake ke, kiutara he waiu mō te tama. In Māori we call kai waiu. It's a particular type of food that is known to produce really good quality milk. And in this particular case, the pakake, which is apparently the scamper down whale, something like that, is known to produce the most perfect quality milk in the mama. So here and in many other ore, we talk about the importance of food for the Tamaiti. Okay. So we're not going to linger on this one too long, but we all know the importance of breast milk. The most important food for a baby, tailor-made. If you were to give a child cow's milk, if you were going to give a child cow's milk at a very young age, it would make the child very sick because, as we all know, cow's milk is for a cow. breast milk is perfect food for a baby, and our milk actually is quite a lot different to cow's milk in composition. It's much more higher than fat, and much more lower in protein. I don't know if you've ever seen a calf grow, but amazing rate. Almost doubles in size in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So we don't need that type of growth. The fat is just to fuel the amount of energy and the development of the brain. Because as we know, the brain is probably 50%, probably even more fat. And particular types of fats in the brain are your omega-3s and another type. What's that one found in coconut again? Lauric acid, and that's the highest amount of lauric acid is found in breast milk, and the second highest is actually found in the coconut. So really high fat formulation is the breast milk. Does anyone know the current recommendations for breastfeeding? Because it could be important with some of you guys will have some young mums, older mums, new mums. Anyone know the current recommendations as by the Ministry of Health? Baby's hungry, feed it. They recommend that a child should be breastfed till 6 months of age. Can be as early as 4 months. Every child's different, but closer to 6 months is the recommendation. Now we always, when we have these cordials, we always, oh, my grandmother gave me when I was 2 months old, 3 months old, and in the islands we know that they often breastfeed their child quite a lot earlier than say here. But from our point of view, we can only offer you the ministry guidelines, which is 6 months. And here's your basic cycle of food for our baby. So 6 months, all the way up to 6 months, it's a liquid diet. Then between 6 to 7 months is pureed. 8 to 9 months is mashed. 10 to 12 months, bit of finger food, get the child using their motor skills as well as their eating skills. And 12 to 18 months, cup, not bottle. Why would you think that they recommend using cups instead of bottles for their teeth? Too much milk on the teeth can actually cause cavities, as well as it gives them some motor skills as well, learning to use their hands and mouth and that kind of coordination. Okay, every child is different because every child follows the same pattern of development, but where a child reaches that stage of development is different for everybody. So, for instance, I had my first child. I think he was running around quite early. He was ready for solids quite early. And then my second child, the exact opposite. He didn't move from his cot till he was after one. He lied down for a whole year. And when I look at him now, I can see he's still that kid. He's still that kid who still wants to lie down. And the other kid's really, really active. So what are some of the signs that we know of that a child is ready for solids? Yep, that's one. Yep. So if you give your child a milk feed and still hungry, that's a sign. What's another sign? I heard someone saying making chewing movements. Yep. So if you're eating, maybe you're eating at the table, the child's looking at you and he's going, that's a sign. So we're looking for signs, but not one sign by itself is the indicator. You're looking for a bunch of signs. A real hard and fast rule is if a child can't hold their own head up, then they're definitely not ready for solids. So if your child can't even hold its own head up, he ain't ready for solids. Any other clues to anyone? Who here is a parent, by the way? Pretty much everybody, except for that corner over there. Whose here's a grandparent? Great grandparent? No. Yep. So most of us here, who's got who's got babies still? Under two. Okay. Yeah. That's just turned one. Okay. Is he walking, climbing? Oh boy. So here's a couple of the clues. Shows interest in food, can hold their head up and sit up with less help. Making chewing mode, that was mentioned. Put things in the mouth, uses tongue to move food into the mouth. Mouth opens easily as a spoon touches lips. Can keep food in their mouth. So if you have a child who's 4 or 5 years old and they show all of these signs, then maybe that's a good clue that that child is ready for solids earlier. If the child doesn't present those, then perhaps they're not. We do know that, especially amongst Māori and Pacific Islanders, we do have a tendency to offer solids too early, and then a whole bunch of those little issues that we can get, all those inflammatory issues of eczema, asthma, all that sort of thing. And it's only a theory, no one has said it without doubt, but the theory is that offering those sort of foods early could be contributing to those inflammatory style diseases that we see quite strongly amongst our children. Okay, so here's so too early. If we start giving solids too early, we can so one thing is that a children's has immature kidneys, so they can't process some foods very well, including high protein foods. They need some protein, but too much protein puts too much stress on the kidneys. The gut doesn't have the enzymes in place to break down really, really rich carbohydrate foods as well, or certain type of carbohydrates. Um, and that basically takes time because, as I said, a child is born completely helpless, and they're still. It's as though they're still in the womb on the outside, still developing, still developing. But if you give solids too late, things can happen too. For instance, a mother's breast milk is actually quite low in iron. So if you don't start feeding children solids after 6 months, they could be very low in iron. A baby's given their iron stores at birth pretty much, and that's it for 6 months. They've got 6 months worth. So if you don't start giving solids early enough, they can be iron deficient, zinc deficient, same thing, and they're really, really important for brain development. You, we've got a few interesting stats on iron deficiency in Maori children, eh? Can you remember those? It's high, eh? It's bad. It's probably on the notes. I can't see any of my notes because there's stuff all around. We heard that in, we heard something interesting though from that lady who was from. There's a reason why iron stores are low, eh? What was that? own Māori people. I can't speak for other indigenous people. Ah, I probably don't see the issue being a genetic thing. I'd see it more of a poverty thing of not having the foods available and maybe not just not knowing the types of foods to give to the child. Yeah, totally. So if a mother has low iron status while she's pregnant, then the child may have a low. But what the beauty of what with children, what is that the child takes what it needs from mum. So any little iron she's got, it'll take it. So that really makes it quite bad for the mum because she's really, really low in iron. The baby's probably okay at birth. It's got enough iron for 6 months, but then after 6 months, that iron has run out, and that's when you need to start supplementing it with solid food. So does anyone know iron? What is our most iron-rich food? Silver beet and kidneys. Yeah, kidneys, yes. Yeah, I'm pretty much. I don't know. There's a bit of a. I don't know if it's an old wives' tale or not, but you hear stuff like green leaves, spinach, and stuff like that are high in iron. But if I was to show you this much iron in a piece of steak, the equivalent amount in spinach is about this much. So it's a kind of an old wives' tale to say that dark green leafy vegetables are high in iron, but dark green leafy vegetables are high in iron for a plant. But the most potent amounts of iron is actually in meats, and probably your most potent meats are your organs, so your liver and your kidneys. Yep. Which I had to eat quite a lot of as a kid, and then I left home and never really ate it again. But you know, but we one of our kaimahi who used to work at Toi Tangata, she would cook a liver and then keep it in the freezer, and then she would use a grater and just grate a little bit, tiny little bit into the food of for the child, and that is probably the most richest form of iron you can give a child. So liver. Um, and you got to be careful too because it's so rich. You don't want to overdo it. She only did it once every other day. Um, mm, yeah. And even your cereal, such as porridges, is actually for a plant that's quite high. Uh, and what's that baby cereal they sell? Barracks. Yeah, that's quite high in iron as well. I've never even seen it. We never bought it. What to feed baby? Okay, first time foods. Yep, you've had your baby and it's kind of cool because you don't actually have to feed it any real food, but sooner or later you're going to have to prepare actual food. And so now we're talking about first foods. Now, there's a things are slightly changing from when I first went to university to learn about this because we used to say, don't let your child touch these foods too early because they could get allergies. The thinking's changing. And this is the thing about nutrition is that it's always changing. Biology hasn't changed too much, but the research is changing. So now we are saying it's okay to expose babies to new types of food. So it's okay to expose a 5 month old to a piece of fish, to a piece of egg. So these are your allergen foods, are your protein type foods. So You got gluten in your wheats, you got fish, you got shellfish, you got nuts. And not all nuts are the same. Every single nut is different. So just because the child tasted some peanut doesn't mean that they couldn't have allergic reaction to another type of nut. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So when you first give a child a new food, don't mix it with another new food, because if there's a reaction, you want to be able to know what it was. If you gave them 5 new types of foods at once and they had a reaction, it's like, oh, I'm going to have to do a test on my child again. So one new food at a time. It's okay to expose a child to those allergens earlier, but don't give them a whole big, huge amount in one go of new food. Just let them have a little bit of a taste. Be vigilant is what they say. Be vigilant in noticing any reaction, any swelling, any breathing, and then you do that, and then 95% of the cases your child should be fine. Um, and when we talk about nuts, you generally don't want to give a child a peanut because they could choke on a peanut, but peanut butter is a good way to introduce nuts to a baby. A piece of bread, a little bit of peanut butter. I mean, if they've already had bread, that's a good way to introduce. They do say really acidy citric foods aren't too good at the beginning as a first food. So apples, lemons, and oranges are a bit too acidic at the beginning. So just to watch those, and really high spicy foods. It's hard to get a 5-year-old to have a spicy food, never known a baby. Curries, really, really sweet foods, really, really salty foods. And the other thing that we all tend to do as parents is that when we put a first food together, we tend to go and taste it and we go, it needs salt, or that needs sugar, that needs butter. But what we've got to remember is that the child hasn't really acquired those tastes. These are adult acquired tastes. Keep your foods bland, because that's the best way to set up a child. If you start a child into sweet foods too early, once they get into sweet foods, then they won't want to. These are the babies that don't want to eat their vegetables, like those sort of bland, what do you call it, vegetable type tastes. They don't want to. They don't want to know it after they've been given custard, given all these sort of sweet foods. So try and keep it bland. Don't add salt, don't add sugar. They they know no better until you introduce them to that world of sweetness. Um, that's, that's some really, really good advice. And the old we've all seen it before. Sugary drinks and bottles and stuff like that. If you see that in your clients, think of some way while still maintaining their mana, of talking them out of that practice, because that is probably one of the most damaging things you can do for a baby, is to give them sugary drinks in a bottle. Sets them up for life. I already talked about iron. I don't need to talk about that again. All right, so foods that need to wait. So cow's milk, straight out of the bottle, wait for 1 year. And actually the first year, give them full fat cream milk. That's the recommendation. So it's really cool. Once I remember when our children turned 1, it's straight out of the fridge. Here you go, boy, drink it, and no heating it up, no nothing. That was really cool. Whole nuts, they may choke, but you can still introduce nuts. Honey, I've never even heard of a child getting botulism ever, but that is one of the recommendations, to withhold honey till 1 year old. Anyone like toroi? Anyone heard of someone who died of eating toroi? I think it's It's a type of bacteria that's known to sit in foods that, in preserved foods. Um, Apparently, that's the toxin that bacteria produces. They use for stop you from getting lines. Botox, botulism, Botox, because it's that toxic. It kills. So it basically, literally kills the nerves, so you're unable to use it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Heat kills bacteria, but it doesn't kill toxins. I mean, if you boil poison, it's just boiled poison. So, not good. But I hear I've been told up in Tūhoe they will every now and then a kaumātua gets really sick on toroi through botulism. I haven't heard of it lately, but when we bring it up in the kōrero, they go, "Oh yeah, my auntie, my uncle got real sick." It's pretty potent stuff. Mm, yeah, yeah. So then put a yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if everything at the beginning's done right and that the plants and the kutai and everything is clean, then it should be okay. I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but no tea, herbal tea, coffee, and alcohol for a child. But you say it's a no-brainer, but you hear of it or you see it. Fizzy drinks and cordial. I would, if you're working with young mums, sort of try and say, try not to start giving your child a sweet drink, a fizzy drink, a cordial to at least 1 year of age. See if you can last 12 months. That's a real good challenge. I tried that with my own kids, but my family didn't care about what I thought. They just, okay, here you go, here you go. Uh, yeah, those ones. But that's the one thing I had as a nutritionist, I had all of these ideas about how my children were going to eat, and kind of they all went out the window because the realities of the environment that we live in and the families that we live with, um, quite difficult, especially if you're living with grandparents and stuff like that. Yeah. No need to delay fish, eggs, nuts, stuff like that. Fussy children, very, very, very common. Um, my children are very fussy themselves, but we're there. They eat their vegetables now. You just eat a little bit. I remember at class we were told don't offer bribes. I just offered bribes. You're not going to get any pudding until you eat that. They say don't do that. But I find because the rationale by why they say that is they say that the child sees the other food as being of greater importance than your vegetables. But what I find is if you can just get them to eat it a little bit and then get them to eat a little bit more, then they can just stand it. They can just eat it. And I can remember I didn't like vegetables until I kind of left home. Then when you actually buy your own vegetables, you better eat them because you spend your own money. But my children will now eat all their vegetables, even though they don't like it. And I'm not, I don't have a problem with that. I just tell them. I didn't like vegetables when I was your age too, but I just see it as medicine. I see it as rongoa. Hei whakakaha i tō tinana. So they understand that. Um, how many times do they? There's an average. It's about 17 times, isn't it? 15 times. So your average child will turn their nose up on a new food, in particular a vegetable, 15 times. So you just got to keep, you try, you fail, you try, you fail, but you don't give up. I know of two children, one who's a nephew and one who's a friend. They gave up too early, and to this day, their children don't. They only eat processed carbohydrates. They don't eat anything else. And even though both of their parents are black, they're really, really white. They're really fair skinned, and they look kind of like they haven't slept. That's what they look like. And because their parents didn't fight hard enough, that's how I feel. They didn't fight hard enough to get their kids. They just gave up. But in saying that, they had a big family too. So that's for a while. So don't give up, but don't get into a fight either. Once you start getting into a fight, then the child's won in some ways. So you just eat it, okay. Eat it, okay. And if that's not working, I think bribes are okay. Oh, edit this. Oh yeah, and lead by example. I mean, if you're not going to eat it, then the child's probably not going to eat it too. So eat all your healthy foods. Snack ideas. If we were going to be at the marae today, we would have did some snacks, but unfortunately we don't have access to a kitchen. These guys have got printouts, eh? Fresh or dried fruit, frozen fruit. Has anyone ever squashed a banana and put it in the freezer? Awesome, eh? Just like ice cream. And I've also discovered that those frozen strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries can be eaten frozen too. They're kind of not quite like ice cream, but more like a sorbet. That's cool. Scones, raisin toast, mini muffins. Using those ice cube containers to make all sorts of bunch of things. Anyone seen those food hacks on Facebook? Some pretty amazing ideas for snacks for children. And I've seen this one just based on those ice cream containers. Breakfast cereals. For young kids, most of those breakfast cereals are okay. Uh, crackers, vegetable soup, Milos. Um, but you can't go past the old fruit for instant healthy food. So a child, an under two, kind of needs to follow this sort of pattern. They need a breakfast, they need a snack, they need a lunch, they need a snack, they need dinner, they need a snack. Um, most of us probably eat like that anyway, but that's what children definitely need. But unlike adults, children have small stomachs, and that's the major reason why they need multiple feeds throughout the day. Breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack. Here's a couple of those ideas. Oh, that looks like from those food hack ones, eh? What's that about top right one? Avocado and pear. Oh, oh no, the top right one. What's that one? You guys have those? Don't you have can ice blocks where you're from? Did we make those pancakes the other day? What's not here? What's in those one that's made out of porridge, eh? Isn't that a pancake made out of porridge and egg? No? Yeah. Yeah. And what's that strawberry one? Just frozen berries. Cool. Berries are quite good too. They're not like as sugary as say citrus fruit. The average apple's got like 2 teaspoons of sugar. The banana's 3, but the general makeup of a berry is a low sugar fruit. That's kind of cool. Have you ever made those avocado ice blocks? All right, let's do it. And we're just going to reinforce that one. So no solids before 4 months, close to 6 months is preferred. Keep food bland, no added sugar and salt. So this is for the under twos. No raw cow's milk before 12 months. Although, do you hear that they're talking about a change in that? We've heard some mutterings that this is not coming from the ministry health guidelines, but I hear Plunkett might be actually even saying a younger age, but I can't confirm that. You just hear things. Between 12 and 24 months, full fat blue top milk. I've got to say, once our kids started doing that, we actually haven't gone back. Now it's like 10 years ago. No tea, herbal tea, coffee, and alcohol. Avoid salty meat, corned beef, canned fish, povi masima for that first 12 months at least. After 6 months, people can try kaimoana, fish, eggs, nuts, other well-known allergens. When trying new foods such as nuts, milk, and kaimoana, be vigilant in case of bad reactions. Only use one new food at a time. 2 years plus, use reduced fat milk. After a child is over 2, they can pretty much eat anything that an adult should eat. That's it. So basically, they're little mini me's. They can eat what dad can eat, or what dad should be eating, should I say? Tips for whānau. Oh yeah, there's that miraka first. So at the beginning, when they're first doing solids, it's breast milk or the other milk, formula milk. That's it. First, and then feeds after. And then after a couple of months of that, then you swap it around. And then it becomes food first, milk second. Prepare kai at home, smooth purees. Everyone seems to be getting those puree things. We never had them when we were young, but everyone seems to be getting them now, so that makes it real easy for those sort of foods. Use a wooden spoon to push soft or cooked foods like banana cooked kumara through a sieve. What is that? Oh, if you don't have a food processor. Start with small amounts, half a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons at a time. Oh yeah, so we're in that transition phase. Start by offering solids once a day, and then over time twice a day, and so on. Let develop. What is that new way of feeding? Well, it's not new way, but some is it the la leish infant-led feeding? Has anyone ever heard of that? Infant-led feeding? Where you try and you get a bunch of foods, and the child decides for themselves, as long as they're healthy, they make their own determinations of their foods and they feed themselves. In fact, they kind of miss out that spoon feeding thing. They go straight to finger foods. Ministry won't back that yet because they say there's not enough information, not enough research on it, but it seems pretty cool. And if you know parents that are into that, I don't see an issue with it. It does seem that children become a lot more independent. They use their motor skills earlier. You know, you can imagine a 6-month-old who can feed themselves compared to a child who's spoon-fed till they're 12 months of age. So it's called the La Leish. La Leish, don't ask me how to spell it. But that's child-led feeding. Try new foods. If Pepe doesn't like kai, try again in a few days. Mix it with kai they do like. As baby becomes more active, offer more food more often. Everyone's seen a child who's kind of podgy and then they start walking, hey, and then they just start to lose quite a lot of weight, hey, because they're moving so much. So you need to up the feeds when you see that. Children shouldn't really be losing weight. They should be gaining weight. generally. And as I said, we follow the old breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner snack. Yep, so now we're talking about children who are 2 years old now, are we? Yep. Who here got children who still go to preschool, Kuangareo? Do they feed the child there, or do you have to supply both? Bit of both. Generally, most preschools, most Kuangareos, you pretty much your children are getting fed pretty well. Most of them are pretty onto it by now. But if you if you do have to, the troubles that we see in preschools is when the parents have to supply the food for the child, and that's when we start seeing all of that processed foods, the packets of chips and all sorts of things like that. And then after a while, then the things get so bad, the preschools need to develop policy, because it's hard if you're trying to feed that kid quite healthy, and then that kid's eating chips and stuff like that, and that kid wants that food and stuff like that. So we've seen all that happen. I've done quite a lot of work in early childhood centres. It's yeah, if you can, those ones that supply the food, you pretty much can be happy about what your child's going to eat. Parakuihi, we all recommended to have a breakfast as adults, but it's really, really important for kids to have a breakfast, because they're fasted that whole 8 to 10 hours while they've slept, and now they pretty much need to refill. There's so many different types of breakfast out there. You can pretty much guarantee when you're at a supermarket, if the cereals have cartoon characters on it, or the cereals have, you can tell are being marketed towards children, you can pretty much guess that that's no good. They done this study, and out of 24 cereals, only like 4 of them were recommended to children. Now, some of you might know about the heart tick. We've never been a big fan of the heart tick, because the heart tick still recommends really high sugary stuff. And it was only in the paper, the news 2 weeks ago, that the Heart Foundation are now they're introducing new criteria for the heart tick, because they've realised that they've been giving ticks to a whole lot of products that are very, very high in sugar. Yeah, and some of them, yeah, they've really been strongly focused on sodium and salt and heart disease type stuff, and they haven't been very focused on the sugar, but they're going to be doing it very, very soon. So we've always said, just because it's got a tick doesn't mean, to us, it doesn't mean it's healthy. Sometimes they have a heart tick pie, and a pie is essentially not the healthiest food. So the pie that gets the tick is the healthier of the pies and things like that. But people go, oh, it's got a tick, I can eat 4 of these because it's got a tick. Yeah, yeah. And that's unfortunately how people interpret the tick. So we're going to go over some quick label reading, just to go over it again, that one that we taught last time. And you don't need to worry about the tick, because you can interpret it for yourself. Yeah, real high in sugar. I mean, if you've just done a big event, it'd be great. But not to be had as your standard everyday breakfast. Yeah. Um, when I go camping, it's real easy because it's just have milk. But I see it I see it more as a dessert than a everyday breakfast. Tamariki have not eaten for 12. We just talked about this. And this is really important for especially school age kids. You could debate the importance of breakfast for adults. You know, some people might not be hungry in the morning. It's not the end of the world if you don't have breakfast, but you really got to get your children to have breakfast because the studies show quite strongly that children that don't eat breakfast tend to not be able to concentrate class, and because they can't concentrate, they tend to not do so well as well. Um, you know, when you're hungry, it's hunger is such a powerful force. It's all encompassing. Just when you're hungry, it can take over all your thought processes. Hey, I don't know if anyone's ever tried out a little bit of a fast. You've obviously been fasting a lot, doing your duties at the marae. It comes in waves, the hunger, but when it comes, man, it's all you can think about. So you don't want our children going through that at their school. Now I know a lot of schools here in South Auckland are providing breakfast for their kids, and even out west, maybe even other places. They're really great ways of ensuring that children get a good start. But if parents, you can encourage parents to feed their children, that's probably better. Porridge, you can basically give your child a bowl of porridge, or even just a piece of toast, some peanut butter on it, and that, you know, that's sort of the bare minimum. That's under 50 cents. Here's a whole bunch of different ideas. My 9-year-old's just learned how to do. He likes scrambled eggs in the morning, so he does it himself. He gets up quite early to do it, and he's turning into a little cook, that boy. Yeah, he does it. He knows eggs 3 ways, he says. Yeah. But now we have to get 48 eggs every shopping because of him. Because of him and me. And that's another thing, yeah, involving your children in the cooking. That's really, really important. Really, really important. And oh, as we said, there's the old pareti. What was that? We used to call it Māori porridge. Yeah, no good. Don't give a kid that. What was the Māori we used to call it? Do you remember? That flour and water one. Yeah, it's pretty much like what you used to use for paper mache. Nah, just flour and water. Yeah. Yeah, if you're lucky, you used to get the clumpy bits. That was like your dough boys. Yeah, yeah, that's basically poverty food. You get water. It glues, binds in your stomach, gives you a sense of fullness. And then the milk that you added gave you some protein. Breakfast cereals. I Weebix is also a good one, good go-to one, and quite reasonably cheap as well. Toast, you can't go past toast. Like, well, I got one lazy kid, because they have to make their own breakfast, and then I'll let him away with toast on the weekend, but on the weekday at school, I'm not happy with him just having a piece of toast. He has to make some breakfast. And if it's the weekend and he's playing league, I'm not happy with a piece of toast neither. All right. Oh, I've got to leave this on. That one. So we're going to do a little activity that we did when we used to work with the Kuangareo, and it's how to make a healthy lunchbox. Anyone's kids still going to school? Going to school? Yeah. So this is quite helpful. As I said, my kids are a little bit lazy. They've only just been making their lunch now. And they're like 9 and 10, so I left that a little bit late, but they could have probably been doing it years and years ago. And they reasonably follow this thing right here. And so what we encourage a child to do is there's 4 things, but there's 5 things up there, because the reason we put 5 things in there is we didn't want to confuse people with the 4 food groups. So there's 5 things. But the 5th thing is water. And at most schools and at most preschools, children have good, direct access to water. I can remember when I was at school, there was no water. We had to drink either in the toilets or drink out of the fire hose. And it used to taste like rubber. But after running around all day, you drink anything. But thankfully, we're a lot more smarter now. We look after our children. So our 4 different types of food is an energy food. So in Kuanga Reo, we call it the kai hihiri, kai whakahihiri. We want a sustaining food. We want either a fruit or a vegetable. And then we couldn't think of a better word than for a treat. I know over at the Heart Foundation, they don't like us to use the word treat. So we're Toi Tangata, so we're going to say treat. We say what we want, edit that. And the kai hihiri is basically anything bready, anything starchy. It's your carbohydrate food, and that's probably, especially for children, going to form the main component of a child's lunchbox. And probably the most well-known, easier, cheapest starchy food out there is bread. And we say if you try and get anything but white. So there's a whole range of different breads. There's wheatmeal, there's wholemeal, and then there's whole grain. Your whole grain is your full-on grainy bit. You can see the whole seeds in it. Wholemeal, the seeds are in it, but they've been crushed. Wheatmeal is a mixture of white flour and a mixture of wholemeal flour. And if your children are used to white bread, then probably your next transition is your wheatmeal. I do know for people from small towns, they say that their dairy will only stock the white. If you got white, you got white. Any type of spread, margarine, reduced fat, mustard, doesn't matter. If you can add a vegetable to a sandwich, that's the gold standard sandwich. Only issue with adding vegetables to a sandwich is what? Yeah, it can make a sandwich soggy. Their meats are good: ham, chicken, whatever, eggs, cheese, topping. This is probably the biggest deal for kids, is you just go to them, what will you eat? Because what you don't want is a scenario of them opening up their lunchbox and there's the sandwiches still there. Boys are really dumb. They haven't figured out, just throw it out, and you won't know. Girls know really. Yeah. My boys haven't figured it out anyway. So basically, just give them what they want. I got one kid, he wants Nutella, and that stuff's terrible, but he eats it, so oh well. And my other boy, he likes anything really. Yeah, I got one really fussy boy. So he wants Nutella. He gets it, I guess. I'm not happy about it, but that's the way it is. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. Yeah, totally. And but oh yeah. When a kid's 10 years old, they've already got their food behaviours well set. So to come along at age 10 and then try and change it then, it's kind of, the kids won't like healthy food after that. It's be really difficult. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah. 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 Totally, totally. And it's hard too because when you're both parents working and you're tired, it's quite easy. We have these debates all the time, and we always get that you need to be rich or you need a lot of money to 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 eat healthily. And I challenge that a lot. I do challenge that a lot because me personally, I eat next to nothing in terms of what I pay for my food. But what you can't get away from is that it does take time. It does take longer to prepare healthier food. If you want to supply a healthy lunch for your kids, it's going to be a lot. It's going to take a bit more time than having that all prepackaged processed foods that you can just go throw ready. There's no getting away from that. And then you've got to somehow convince yourself or convince other parents that they just need to put in that extra time for the health. And that's kind of what your fella's job is, eh? It's somehow convincing and motivating families to do that. I don't really have an answer. Um, you guys will have the answer for your particular areas, and most of them, probably in some of you guys' examples, are family. It makes it probably even harder. It's easier to tell strangers what to do than your own family. But yeah, it's real hard. But as I say, that first 1,000 days, if you can get people to follow these recommendations in that first 3 years, that's the hardest, and then it should just flow on from there. But to be giving a child this type of food till they're 10 and then somehow change it, they're going to be resistant to that because they've gotten used. There's no doubt processed food tastes yum. Manufacturers have this thing called the what do they call it? They call the bliss point, where they know that you want so much saltiness, that you want so much sweetness, and you want so much this, and they just chuck it in there. I mean, I got a kid who likes a chicken McNugget more than chicken, because they've put something in that nugget that, to his taste experience, is better than a piece of chicken, you know. And even when I showed him a photo of what they do to make a chicken McNugget, hasn't shifted his preferences any. He went ooh in there, but he still wants chicken McNugget. Kids. All right. There's a sort of an anti-bread thing going on at the moment. I've noticed. I reckon, and you go to preschools, and if you go to an affluent preschool, like 3 out of 4 kids are gluten intolerant, and then you go to a poor one, and hardly any of them are gluten intolerant because there's this perceived thing out there that bread's bad for you. I'm not going to get into that debate, um, but I do know most of the gluten intolerances out there is perceived. It's not actual. Bread is a good healthy food. It's cheap. If you're working with low-income families, it's a go-to food. But there are instances. So if we're looking for that kaihihiri or that energy food, there are non-bread alternatives. Uh, and spaghetti, lasagna, rice, stir fries, and noodles. As you might see, though, the pasta, rice, and noodles are all what known as from the grain family. So if you've got any paleo supporters here, you probably won't, even those wouldn't work for you. I have heard of parents following paleo for kids. It must be so hard. I wouldn't even know where to start in terms of their lunchbox. Jeez. But if they want to go down that road, all power to them. But pretty much at our house, it's just a sandwich. So just to go back, so this is the energy giving food. This is basically the food that powers their activity throughout the day. This is the food that your brain needs. This is the food that your muscle wants. Okay, and it's to form the major component of your child. But what I've also noticed in kids' lunchboxes are too carbohydrate. Everything's carbohydrate, carbohydrate. We forget about the importance of the protein. Um, in a shopping list, though, protein is your more expensive food, whether it's from eggs or meats. The protein component of anybody's diet is the most expensive bit. And that's probably got a large reason why children's lunchboxes are so carbohydrate heavy. But protein has two really important properties. The first is that you got children who are growing rapidly, and so you need a reasonably high amount of protein to support that growth. Secondly, protein keeps you fuller for longer. So children who eat a real rich carbohydrate meal without protein, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, they're hungry again. So it's really important that they have some protein throughout the day. And there's your list of protein-rich foods. All your meats, eggs. Eggs are probably your cheapest, highest quality form of protein. Milks. I know at my school they get the free milk from Terra, and my boy is the milk monitor, so we got stacks of it at home. It's awesome. He brings like 8 of those things from school every day. We don't need to buy milk anymore. Yogurt, cheese, all your nuts are kind of a high protein plant food, seeds, and legumes. Anyone know what legumes are? They're your beans or your pulses, lentils. I don't know if you can get your kid to eat those, but give it a go. Legumes are an amazing plant because they basically are nitrogen fixers. They grab the nitrogen out of the air, put it in the soil. Nitrogen is your main component of protein, and that's hence their seeds are quite high in protein. So you got a carbohydrate-rich food, you got a protein-rich food. Any fruit or vegetable that you can think of. Fruits, there's just a huge wide range of fruits that you can choose, but vegetables, there's only like a couple that you can pick that I know of. Cherry tomatoes, carrots, celery, cucumber, corn on a cob. Think of any others that a child would eat? I think if you put a piece of silver beet in there, it's not going to work. They won't really eat that. So we've got our energy food, so it's any sort of carbohydrate food. Then you got your sustaining food, some protein, any fruit or vegetable, and something like a treat. Remember our 3 principles. So in a treat, if you're cooking, what we would have done is we would have, like for instance, see that muffin down there, we add more goodness to that muffin by doing a mixture of white and wholemeal flour, or adding nuts, or adding dried fruit or something like that. Just reducing our saturated fat and reducing our amount of salt, and also the portion sizes, the amounts that you give a young child is really important. So an adult serving size is obviously quite a lot more than a child serving size. If you were to give, say, a child those muffins, say at those some of those coffee places you see, they're massive, too much for an adult even. So that's way too big for a young child. But if you were to go to a supermarket and you wanted to pick which were the healthier versions of what you got, you follow this criteria. Can anyone remember when we did the label reading way back a couple months ago, when we told you high, very high, extremely high? Can anyone remember that? Missed that one? because this is slightly different than that. But we'll just to reinforce ourselves again. Get these criteria for finding out something's very high in sugar, something's very high in fat, something's very high in sodium, something's very high in saturated fat, something's very high in fiber, which is a good thing. So can anyone remember the numbers for sugar? So it's high, very high, extremely high. What are they again? Oh yeah, that's right. 20, 30, 10, 20, 30, that's right. So if you go to so what I want you to do is go to the per 100 gram column and go to sugar and slide along. So anything that's over 10 is high. Anything that's over 20 is very high, and anything that's over 30 is extremely high. Yeah, but it's got a red tick. And sometimes you'll see a tick there that's just a tick without even a heart foundation tick. So they're just being smart and just copied off the tick. So just remember this number, 10, 20, 30. High, very high, extremely high. Remember that, 10, 20, 30. So anyone got anything over 10? All right, well, I'm still in the game because these peanuts are very low in sugar. You're out. Okay, now we go to fat. Remember our numbers 10, 20, 30, they're the same. Go to the per 100 gram column, slide along, 10, 20, 30. We're looking at fat. Just total. Yeah, not saturated, total. You might notice often when things are high in sugar, they may be low in fat, or something's high in fat, may be low in sugar. And some of you have got high fat, high sugar. So anyone got high fat here? All nuts are high fat food. These are 50%. So 10, 20, 30. Okay, now our sodium numbers are 350, 450, 550. High, very high, extremely high. 350, 450, 550. So go to your columns. Go to sodium, 620. So if 350 is high, 450 is very high, 550 is extremely high, then 620 is really, really, really high. 350, 450, 550. So can anyone, so what are without looking up on the board, what are the numbers for sugar? 10, 20, 30. What are the numbers for fat? What is the numbers for sodium? Halfway. Now, saturated fat, our numbers are 369. So 3 being high, 6 being very high, 9 being extremely high. 6.8. 7. 11. It looks so good for you. Okay, and finally, fiber is 369 as well. But what's the difference between fiber and all the other ones? What's the main difference? You want more. More is better. For where those other ones are, less is best. For fiber, more is better. So 369, the same numbers as saturated fat. Yeah, sometimes they don't have it. It generally means it's because there's none. Alright, so just going to go over that again, but the key rings are slightly different. So I'll just go over this. We're just reinforcing those numbers that we did a few weeks back. So sugar is 10, 20, 30. Fat is 10, 20, 30. Saturated fat is, sodium is 350, 450, 550. Sodium, no, sorry, saturated fat is 369 and fiber is 360. Okay, remember that. Kapai. But now we're doing children's snacks. So this is only for children's snacks and are slightly different. And the main reason it's different is that we are, in the first version, we go to the per 100 gram column always. This is, we do a bit of both. So the first thing you want to do is go to the per 100 gram column and make sure, or see if it's over 1,850 kilojoules. So the point of this practice is if you exceed any one of these criteria, then pick something else. Okay? So this is what you call the energy density. So for every 100 grams, you don't want to have more than 1,850 kilojoules. If you do, it's too energy dense. So who has already exceeded 1,850? Throw it across the room. This is 2,500. It's two. Okay, so that's the only one you go to the per 100 gram column. The rest you go to the per serve column. Okay. Now, the per serve thing, it's a funny thing, the per serve, because it's the manufacturer that decides what is the serving. For most of us here, we've got these little mini packets, and that's quite easy to work out a serving because one of those is a serving. But you might have, say, Nutrigrad, where a serving, they'll say, is 30 grams. Or, unless you've got a way of measuring it, it's hard to work out. Sometimes it's biscuits, and I'll say a serving of biscuits could be 6 biscuits, or a serving of biscuits could be 1 biscuit. So you've got to work all that out. But for us, for this exercise, it's quite easy. So now we go to the energy per serve. So what you want is that a child or even an adult who eats the snack is not exceeding 600 kilojoules to eat that one serving. So this one here is 440. So under the current criteria, this meets it, but unfortunately it exceeded the 1,850, so it didn't meet the criteria. Yeah, you got to go. But if you exceed any one of these criteria, then technically you shouldn't buy it. The reason why we do the per 100 grams, that just stops them from giving a piece of chocolate and making it so small that it fits under the 600 kilojoules criteria. So that's why we do the per 100 gram one. Okay, so the next one is sodium. Has anyone got their? It's over there. Sorry, the next one is saturated fat. Go to the per serve and make sure that it's not over 2.5 grams per serving. Yep. And finally, go to the sodium and make sure that it's not over 200 milligrams per serve. So what we're saying is, doesn't necessarily mean that it's great food or healthy food, but we are talking about a treat. But what you're ensuring is you're getting a better of a bad bunch, maybe. Is that way of thinking? That's a high. That's a sweet food. I mean, and you can be happy to know that when your child say eats that, they're getting less than 600 kilojoules instead of getting 1,200 kilojoules. Far too much energy than a child requires. Okay, so yeah, when we worked with the Kuama, the old parents, they found those key rings really, really helpful. They had it when they're inside. What you do is you bring it to the supermarket, but after a while you won't need it. And then also remember those numbers in your head of tier 2030s, 350, 450, 550, 369, and then after a while, once you do it over a number of times, you just stick in your head and you won't need it. Oh well, kia ora koutou.